Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're setting sail, I guess you could say, on this fascinating journey through the life of Violet Jessop.
Oh, yeah.
This is a woman who experienced not one, not two, but three major maritime disasters.
Wow.
The collision of the RMS Olympic, the sinking of the Titanic,
Oh, my
and the
goodness.
sinking of the HMHS Britannic.
It's almost unbelievable.
It's a story that's unbelievable and utterly true.
It is really, she had a knack for being in the wrong place at the wrong time.
For the right place.
Yeah, or the right place, depending on how you look at it.
Exactly.
It's truly a survival story for the ages.
So we're diving into a pile of historical accounts, memoirs, and even some newspaper clippings just to kind of get a sense of what shaped Violet's remarkable life.
Right.
So was she just incredibly lucky? Or were there some unique skills or personality traits that allowed her to navigate these disasters?
That's what we're here to find out.
That's the big question.
Yeah, I'm especially interested in exploring, her mindset during these incredibly chaotic and terrifying events.
All right, because we often romanticize survival.
Yeah.
But what does it really take to stay calm and make these life or death decisions when everyone around you is panicking?
Right.
So to understand those moments, let's rewind back to the beginning.
Okay.
Violet was born in Argentina to Irish immigrants,
Okay.
one of 9 children,
Wow.
only 6 of whom survived infancy.
And she even fought and beat tuberculosis as a child.
Yeah.
So that alone speaks volumes about her resilience and her determination, even from an early age.
Yeah, you have to wonder if overcoming such a serious illness at such a young age somehow prepared her for the challenges that she would face later in life.
It's certainly possible. I mean, facing mortality head-on, especially as a child, can have a profound impact on one's outlook.
Absolutely. And then when Violet was just 16 years old, she lost her father due to complications from surgery.
Oh, wow.
So imagine dealing with that kind of loss at such a crucial point in your life,
It's a pivotal moment for anyone, really.
especially for a young woman in the early 20th century.
Yeah, absolutely.
And after her father's death, her mother moved the family to England and started working as a cruise ship stewardess.
Okay.
So this is really where Violet's connection to the sea begins.
Right.
She kind of follows in her mother's footsteps.
And it wasn't an easy path for her either.
Right.
There are some accounts that suggest that she was actually considered too young and attractive to be a stewardess.
Really?
Yeah, she was even advised to dress down and minimize her appearance to get hired.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
It is.
Here she is, a young woman trying to make her way in the world,
All right.
facing prejudice based solely on her looks.
Exactly.
And it's a testament to her determination
Yeah.
that she didn't let these obstacles deter her.
She persevered, and
Yeah.
she landed her first position with the Royal Mail Line in 1908.
Okay.
Just a few years later, in 1911, she found herself working on the RMS Olympic,
Wow.
the largest civilian liner at that time.
Talk about a change of scenery.
Yeah.
From small ships to a floating palace. I mean, the Olympic was considered the epitome of luxury and technological advancement.
It was cutting edge at the time.
Yeah.
But in September of that year, the Olympic collided with a British warship,
Oh.
the HMS Hawk,
Wow.
causing significant damage to both ships.
And this was Violet's first brush with disaster at sea.
Yes. Thankfully, there were no fatalities.
But I can only imagine the sheer terror of experiencing such a collision.
It's fascinating how Violet reacted to this incident.
Yeah. How did she?
Well, she later described it with remarkable calmness,
Oh, wow.
detailing how she helped passengers into lifeboats.
Okay.
And she even went back to her cabin to grab a toothbrush.
A toothbrush amidst all of that chaos.
I know.
What does that tell you?
Well, it suggests an incredible level of practicality and composure under pressure.
Yeah.
She was unflappable.
Yeah.
Imagine yourself in that situation. Your first instinct probably wouldn't be to prioritize oral hygiene.
Definitely not.
Right.
Most people would be panicking.
Yeah.
But she was focused on the essentials.
Absolutely.
This incident could have easily traumatized her and pushed her away from a life at sea.
Right.
But it seemed to have the opposite effect.
It did. Instead of shying away from the sea, she embraced it.
Okay.
And this is where things get even more interesting. Just 7 months later, she found herself working on the Titanic.
You can't talk about Violet Jessop without mentioning the Titanic.
Right.
It's the event that solidified her place in history and earned her the nickname Miss Unsinkable.
It's incredible that she was on not just one, but 2 of the most infamous ships in history.
So let's set the stage.
Okay.
Violet boards the Titanic as a stewardess 4 days before its maiden voyage.
Right.
She's 24 years old, likely excited to be part of this grand adventure.
And you have to consider the atmosphere on board. I mean,
Right.
the Titanic was considered unsinkable.
Right.
The peak of luxury and innovation, passengers felt safe and secure.
It's almost eerie how that sense of security would be shattered just a few days later. And Violet herself mentioned that the crew was specifically told not to frighten the passengers.
Really?
There was a deliberate effort to maintain this illusion of absolute safety.
Wow. Which makes what happened next even more tragic.
On the night of April 14, 1912, the Titanic struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic.
Oh my.
And I can only imagine the shock and disbelief that must have rippled through the ship.
Especially because that unsinkable myth was so deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
It's hard to fathom how people must have reacted when they realized the danger they were in.
Absolutely. Violet even mentioned in her accounts that she had to convince some passengers that the situation was serious.
Wow.
They were so confident in the ship's invincibility
Right.
that they initially dismissed the threat.
Wow. It's a powerful reminder of how marketing and propaganda can really shape our perceptions.
Yeah, even in the face of imminent danger.
Absolutely.
But as the situation on board worsened, Violet found herself assigned to Lifeboat 16.
Okay.
And this is where one of the most intriguing mysteries of her Titanic experience emerges.
You're talking about the baby.
Yes.
The one that was supposedly handed to Violet just as the lifeboat was being lowered.
Exactly. The story goes that a ship's officer placed a baby in her arms, urging her to care for it.
Wow. And what's fascinating is that Violet never learned the baby's identity.
Right.
The mother allegedly retrieved the child upon reaching the rescue ship, but Violet never confirmed her name or the baby's fate.
It's a historical what happened to them moment that continues to capture people's imaginations.
It really does.
It really does add another layer of intrigue to her story.
Right.
But we also have to acknowledge that there are conflicting accounts regarding the baby.
Oh, really?
Some sources say she was given the baby in the lifeboat, while others say it happened while she was still on deck.
Okay.
So either way, she ended up caring for a child during the evacuation.
Right. It's important to recognize these discrepancies when we're dealing with historical accounts, especially when they rely on personal memories and interpretations of events.
Yeah.
But regardless of when she took charge of the baby, it speaks to the chaos and desperation of those final hours on the Titanic.
Absolutely. And after a harrowing night adrift in a lifeboat, Violet and the other survivors were rescued by the RMS Carpathia.
Wow.
Can you imagine the relief and the exhaustion they must have felt?
To have survived such a catastrophe
Yeah.
and then to grapple with the enormity of the loss, it's almost incomprehensible.
It must have been overwhelming.
And yet, after experiencing the tragedy of the Titanic and spending the night, in a freezing lifeboat, Violet continued working as a stewardess.
It makes you wonder, was she drawn back to the sea or was she running from something else?
That's a great question. And as we delve further into her story, we'll see as any patterns emerge that might give us some clues. Welcome back to our deep dive into the life of Violet Jessop. Last time we left off with Violet having survived both the collision of the Olympic and the sinking of the Titanic.
2 major maritime disasters, and she's still going strong.
It's unbelievable, right? You'd think those experiences would be enough to make anyone swear off the sea forever. But not Violet. She
Yeah.
seemed to have this unwavering connection to it.
Yeah.
And as fate would have it, that connection would lead her straight into her third maritime disaster.
Oh, no.
When World War I broke out in 1914,
Okay.
Violet, like many others, decided to join the war effort.
Okay.
She signed up with the British Red Cross to serve as a stewardess on a hospital ship.
So instead of catering to wealthy passengers on luxury liners, she was now caring for wounded soldiers.
What a dramatic shift in environment.
Yeah.
And the ship she was assigned to was the HMHS Britannic,
Okay.
the younger sister ship of the Titanic and the Olympic.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the emotion she must have felt stepping onto another ship from that same White Star Line fleet?
It must have been a mix of familiarity and apprehension,
Right.
especially knowing what had happened to her previous 2 ships.
Exactly. It's like tempting fate almost. It makes you wonder if she ever questioned her choices, if she ever felt like she was pushing her luck. But whatever her internal struggles may have been, she pressed on. And the Britannic, unlike its sister ships, was no longer the symbol of opulence.
Right.
It had been converted into a floating hospital, a beacon of mercy amidst the horrors of war.
So instead of grand ballrooms and luxurious cabins, the Britannic was now filled with sterile wards and operating rooms. I bet the atmosphere on board was completely different.
It was right. Instead of the excitement and anticipation of a transatlantic voyage, There was likely a somber sense of purpose, a recognition of the fragility of life, and this shared hope for healing and recovery.
Wow.
And Violet was right in the middle of it all, tending to the wounded, offering comfort and care.
It's hard to imagine the emotional toll that must have taken on her, especially after what she'd already experienced.
Right.
But her resilience really shines through.
Yeah. And then on the morning of November 21st, 1916, disaster struck again.
Oh, my.
The Britannic was sailing through the Aegean Sea when a sudden explosion ripped through the ship. It was a chaotic and terrifying scene.
I can imagine.
Initially, it was thought to be a German torpedo attack.
Okay.
But later investigations concluded that the Britannic had struck a mine planted by German forces.
Another wartime tragedy. But this time, the sinking was much faster than the Titanic, right?
Significantly faster, the Titanic took over 2 hours to sink,
Right.
while the Britannic went down in just 55 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
This situation must have been absolutely frantic.
55 minutes. That's hardly any time to react, let alone organize an evacuation.
Yeah.
Sends chills down my spine just thinking about it.
Violet described the sinking in her memoirs, recounting the terrifying sight of the ship's stern rearing up hundreds of feet into the air before plunging into the depths.
Wow.
She watched as deck machinery crashed into the sea and listened to the final roar of the once majestic vessel as it disappeared beneath the waves.
It's incredible that she was able to recall these details with such clarity even years later.
Right.
It speaks to the profound impact these events had on her. But how did she manage to escape this time?
Well, she was assigned to a lifeboat, but her escape from the Britannic was far more harrowing than her experience on the Titanic.
Okay.
Remember, the ship was sinking rapidly and the propellers were still spinning,
Oh, no.
creating this powerful and deadly suction effect.
I can't even imagine.
Violet's lifeboat was dangerously close to being pulled into those churning propellers.
Oh, no.
Faced with this imminent threat, she made a split-second decision.
What did she do?
She jumped.
She jumped out of a lifeboat into the water with a sinking ship above her.
Yes, it was a desperate act of self-preservation, but as she jumped, she was struck by the ship's keel,
Oh, my.
resulting in a serious head injury.
That's incredible. 3 major maritime disasters, and this one leaves her with a fractured skull. You have to wonder at this point if she had some kind of guardian angel watching over her.
It does seem that way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Despite the odds stacked against her, she survived. She was pulled from the water and spent the following months recovering from her injury. But even a fractured skull couldn't keep Violet away from the sea for long.
Wait, are you telling me that even after this, she went back to work on ships?
You're catching on. It's almost like danger was a magnet for her.
That's an interesting way to put it. It's like she was defying fate itself.
Yeah.
But I have to ask, did those traumatic experiences, especially that head injury, have any lasting effects on her?
Well, she did mention in her memoirs that she suffered from headaches for years afterwards, and she attributed them to the fractured skull she sustained during her escape from the Britannic. But despite these lingering physical reminders, she seemed determined to continue living her life to the fullest.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We're wrapping up our exploration of Violet Jessop's life, a woman who stared death in the face, not once, not twice, but 3 times.
It's amazing.
And emerged each time with an even stronger resolve.
It really challenges our understanding of luck and resilience and maybe even fate.
Exactly. Last time we left off with Violet recovering from a fractured skull after her dramatic escape from the sinking Britannic, and you said she went back to sea.
I did.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around
Well,
that.
it might seem unbelievable to us, but for Violet, returning to sea, it wasn't just about a job. It was a way of life.
Yeah.
She thrived in that environment, surrounded by the familiar routines and rhythms of shipboard life.
It makes you wonder if she had a little bit of a daredevil streak in her, like maybe the danger was part of the appeal.
Well, there are accounts that suggest that she enjoyed the thrill of travel and the social aspects of working on ships. She even received multiple marriage proposals from passengers throughout her career.
Wait, hold on. Marriage proposals from passengers? Tell me more about that.
It's true. One of those proposals even came from a wealthy first-class passenger.
Really?
She declined, of course, but it speaks to her charm and her independence.
Yeah.
She clearly wasn't afraid to make her own choices, both personally and professionally.
She sounds like a woman ahead of her time.
She was.
So did she continue working as a stewardess for the rest of her days?
Actually, no. While she did continue working for the White Star Line for a time, she also worked for the Red Star Line and even returned to the Royal Mail Line at one point.
So she wasn't tied to any one company, it seems like. She was always looking for new experiences and new challenges.
Exactly. And during this time, she completed 2 around-the-world cruises.
Wow.
Imagine what an incredible adventure that must have been in those days.
2 around-the-world cruises. That's amazing. It sounds like she really embraced a life of travel and exploration, but did she ever settle down?
She did eventually. She was briefly married in the late 1920s or early 1930s.
Okay.
But the marriage didn't last, and her husband's name remains a bit of a mystery to historians.
Another mystery. It seems like Violet's life is full of them.
It does, doesn't it? But finally, in 1950, after decades of adventure and resilience, she retired to a small cottage in Suffolk, England.
So after all those years at sea, she found peace and quiet in the English countryside. I can picture her tending to her garden, reflecting on her incredible life, maybe writing her memoirs.
You're not far off. According to some accounts, she enjoyed gardening, raising chickens, and even playing the gramophone in her later years.
It's a lovely image. After surviving so much chaos and tragedy, she found contentment in the simple things. It's a reminder that even those who live the most extraordinary lives often find solace in ordinary moments.
Absolutely. And while she valued her privacy, she did grant a few interviews sharing her firsthand accounts of those historic events.
I can imagine she would have been in high demand. I mean, people must have been fascinated by her story.
They were, but she never sought the spotlight. She seemed content to live a quiet life, reflecting on her experiences and perhaps finding a sense of closure in her peaceful retirement.
Which is understandable. I can only imagine how emotionally draining it would be to constantly relive those harrowing experiences. And what about that unresolved mystery of the baby on the Titanic? Did that ever get solved?
Unfortunately, no. The baby's identity remains a mystery to this day. There was a story about Violet receiving a phone call years later from a woman claiming to be the baby she had rescued.
Really?
But both Violet and her biographer believed it was a prank.
That's too bad. It would have been incredible if that mystery had been solved. It would have brought a sense of closure to that part of her story.
It would have, but some mysteries are destined to remain unsolved. Still the story of Violet, and the baby adds another dimension to her legacy, highlighting her compassion and unwavering courage in the face of unimaginable circumstances.
It really does.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, what do you think Violet Jessop will ultimately be remembered for? Is it her incredible luck, her resilience, her dedication to her work, or perhaps a combination of all those things?
I think it's a combination of all those things. Violet Jessop's story is one of extraordinary resilience, a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure even the most unimaginable hardships.
Yeah.
She faced tragedy head-on time and time again and emerged each time stronger, never letting those experiences define her.
It's an inspiring message, and it's one that continues to resonate with people today. Her story has been featured in books, documentaries, and even a play. She's become a symbol of courage and survival against all odds.
And rightfully so, Violet Jessop's life may have been shaped by extraordinary events, but it's her unwavering spirit and her determination to live life on her own terms that make her story truly unforgettable.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the incredible life of Violet Jessop. What a journey it's been.
It's been a privilege to explore her story with you, and I have a feeling this won't be the last time we hear the name Violet Jessop. Her legacy, like the ship she sailed on, is destined to endure.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.